Hello everyone, this is the iH2 version 2 from iFlight, featuring the RunCam Split 2, 1104 9500 kV motors, Emax Avon 2327 3-bladed props, F4 flight controller with an OSD, 35 amp 4-in-1 ESC supporting up to 6S, TX200U VTX from RunCam, XT30 for your battery connection, capacitor to help clean up video noise. It could come with 2 micro battery straps, or 1 big one. It also comes with a set of prop guards, a strip of standard size dual lock, comes with extra screws and mounting and cabling, hex tools, and a few stickers. Mine weighs almost 90 grams. Motor post to motor post, I'm getting about 107 millimeters. Bottom plate is 2.5 millimeters. Camera mounting plate's almost 2 millimeters. Top plate is almost 2 millimeters as well. As we get started with this flight, please note that we have that wind. And I did that intentionally. I actually flew it on much calmer days, but I wanted to test it in wind because this is a small vehicle and the wind can impact its flight and we might get a little bit of imperfection in that HD footage. I'll also be showing you some of the DVR footage because I think that's equally important. And the reason why I'm showing this footage is I have a couple flights that I want to show, and mainly I struggled with its performance when you try to fly it more aggressively. And one of the things I struggled with was managing the battery, because if you got on the throttle, and the camera angle that I showed you is what I'm flying at because I can't get any more camera angle without modifying a little bit. Whenever I would get on the throttle and actually try to fly fast or maximum camera angle, the battery warnings would come on almost immediately. I should also mention that the recommended battery is a 350 milliamp 2S, which I did try, but if I tried to fly aggressively, I was constantly backing off the throttle. The reason why that it sucks our batteries down is these motors are really high kV. 9500 kV, that's pretty high. And also notice when I did those punches, hopefully you probably already heard it, and I don't have the volume too muted on this, is that we get these high throttle oscillations. So if you're looking at doing high throttle maneuvers, you probably have a little bit of tuning to do on your own. In this flight, I'm actually flying a 2S 525 milliamp. It is a RaceDayQuads battery, and I'll have a link down below. That's a pretty new battery. In that wind, we have a little bit of jitter. It comes with a tune, so that's one nice feature. You don't have to worry about the tune, and you can see that with the 525 milliamp battery that it can fly just fine. Again, this isn't very aggressive, but it is more aggressive than I was able to fly on a 300 or 350 milliamp. I had to use a much larger battery, but our flight time still isn't a lot over 2 minutes with aggressive flying. I will show you a slow and steady flight, just so you get an idea of what a cruising flight is like next. This, of course, will be our slow and steady flight. I'm just going to kind of cruise around the yard. Actually, it's funny that watching this footage going so much slower than I'm used to, I think it slows my voice down a little bit too. It's a funny thing. But you can see there that the sun is about to settle. But I wanted to give you an idea of what you can do. Like, if you have something this small, I'm wondering how you want to fly it. Of course, we're always looking for the perfect quad. It seems like this hobby is more about having a bunch of different quads for a bunch of different flight needs. Kind of like a toolbox. You know, you got different size of Phillips heads, you got different size of straight heads, you got different wrench sizes. It kind of feels like what this hobby's for, that if you want a really good flying quad and a bunch of different circumstances, that you gotta have a bunch of different quads, because as of right now, I don't think there's one quad that covers the entire spectrum, whether it's inside flying or outside flying, or if you're in a home flying, or if you want to do high acrobatic moves, or if you want to do real steady flight like this. I think there's kind of a mix, a give and take that we're kind of looking at all over the place, but nothing's perfect just yet. Maybe one day we'll get there. We've been making improvements in all the components, and having HD footage on a little micro nowadays, that's nuts. We used to look at just trying to get just anything above average footage back when I first started. You know, our cameras were so bad, and cameras themselves are so good, and now we have this HD footage that we can carry around. As far as the footage goes, you know, it's a RunCam split. You can tweak those settings out to your liking. It does have camera control, so you can stop and start the recording from a switch on your radio, which is a nice feature. You can't do that with a Cadix Turtle because of Betaflight support doesn't exist for that. As of tonight when I'm recording that video, I did some checking right before recording, and it seems like that is the case, that we cannot control our Cadix cameras with our radios just yet. Hopefully that will come soon, because it seems like the Cadix Turtle is very, very popular when it comes to ready-to-fly machines. This is about as slow and as steady as I can fly. Hopefully you're getting a good look at the footage. I started off with a faster flight just so you can get an idea about the tune and the image quality when you're going pretty fast, and to talk a little bit about the battery, because if you're buying this thing, I don't recommend buying the battery that the manufacturer recommends. I actually think you want to buy a much bigger battery. Slow and steady, we get about 2 minutes out of it. This flight is the one I mentioned previously about where I had to manage the battery all the time, where I was trying to fly more aggressively, but had to back off. And I think I fly fairly aggressively for about 25 or 30 seconds here, and then you'll notice that I back off the battery and I start to let it recover. And then after that initial burst of being able to fly when the battery's fresh for 25 or 35 seconds, whatever it happens to be, that I really can't fly this aggressively on the recommended battery, which is, in this case, it's a Beta FPV 350. 2S again, but I have to back off the battery. There you can see it every once in a while. I just kind of cruise and I'm trying to let the battery recover a little bit, and then it go again. And that made me a little bit crazy, and that's why I jumped to a much larger battery. It could have been that my Beta FPV battery isn't any good. I've actually got 4 of those 350s. They're definitely not top performers by any stretch. I don't recommend you getting those. I would say go with the RaceDayQuads 525 2S, or if you have somebody who's selling the G&B straight branded version of that, you can also get those batteries and you'll see a much improvement. I think the machine handles it fine. You do not have to stay with that really small recommended battery of 350 because, quite frankly, the weight difference is not that dramatic. Now, if you were to fly a 300 on this versus a 525, that weight difference would be quite dramatic. But I just kind of fool around here a bit and give you an idea what it looks like. Let's go ahead and jump into, oh, and I have that crash too. Proof of concept that it's somewhat durable at least. Let's jump into some DVR, and I show you this footage mainly so that those that aren't familiar with these, and this isn't specific to the RunCam or this particular quad, the Caddx Turtle, the Foxeer Mix, from what I've seen, they're all the same way. You get really nice footage that's recorded on board through an SD card, and in the goggles, your recording isn't nearly as nice. Actually, it's not as nearly as good as kind of a standard camera now. It's kind of muddy, it's kind of hazy. Of course, this time of year is kind of all gray for me. I don't live in an area where we still have greenery this time of year. Everything's pretty much dead. I think the days I was actually flying most of the time, it was under 30 degrees. I get a little bit mixed up in my days because I've been flying a couple of different machines during these periods where it wasn't wet. So you may find that my temperature prediction isn't quite spot on, but we haven't had any days above 40 degrees in the last 4 weeks, 5 weeks maybe. So it's been sub 30 degrees and worse for quite a while. So because it came in the original frame, which has a base plate of 1.5 millimeters, they're not using this anymore, so don't have to worry about it. They've even updated the pictures on the website. This frame came with pretty small, you can tell the difference if you look, if I can get this lined up very well. They've pretty much doubled up the thickness on the base plate and all the other carbon, and there was originally jello because of the flex and the vibration, and the side plates were pretty stock. But you'll notice that there's 3D printed pieces in here now, and that I don't think is going to dampen the camera by any sort, so I kind of think that was wasted effort because this is squeezed in there so tight that I can't envision that 3D print is doing any vibration dampening whatsoever. They did ship these grommets, so that will help with isolating the vibrations away from your flight controller, and they also have 3D printed pieces. I'm using my straw or my toothbrush here, or not toothbrush, I'm using my paintbrush here to point things so I can keep my hand out of view. These are 3D printed down here, and then the round bits. I added the black one. It seemed like I was short, or I did it like they didn't want to because they shipped all these parts after the fact. So that's how I assembled it. Then, of course, you've got your capacitor. And they added this capacitor 3D print afterwards, as well as the 3D print in here. So unfortunately, we have got some space where we can get some camera angle. But the cabling, or the wiring down here, hopefully you can see that. We can get a little bit of light. See that little wire that's running across there? Right there. I'm kind of touching it now. That little wire. That wire I've got fairly tight, and you can see where they've got some VHB tape, I believe, here on the back, sticking the RunCam TX200 to the back of the RunCam split camera. I've actually pulled that up and away a touch. That's how tight this is. So getting more camera angle is going to be difficult, especially if you don't want to get your soldering iron out and do any little DIY hobbyist upgrades. I did use grip on the bottom, so I've got that there. That stuff works great. The only downside is it does, just like it sticks to your battery, everything it comes in contact with sticks to that as well. If you're not familiar, this is where your SD card goes. I've got my finger on this little latch. You pull this down, you slide your SD card in. It is spring loaded, and then this kind of just naturally keeps it in. I've used the Caddx Turtle, which doesn't have this little metal flashing here to keep your SD card in. And quite honestly, I haven't had any troubles with SD cards coming out, but a little extra protection doesn't hurt because it probably doesn't weigh more than about a quarter gram anyways. The receiver squeezed in here on top, and then you can see my wires come down through the antenna tubes, and the antenna tubes are kind of necessary to help keep you from maybe catching this antenna because it is out front and proud. That is using a UFL here, so if you hit something and it happens to get here after a crash, I would suggest checking to make sure your UFL is attached. I'm not crazy about the fact because in this micro we've got this ribbon cable and it's all folded up in here. I don't know how durable these ribbon cables are, but I'm a little bit worried about that. But in concept, it seems to be fine. In reality, it seems to be fine because I had the crash that I showed you, and I had other crashes, and it's fine. It still works. Everything's okay. So maybe I'm worrying over nothing. If originally you saw this featured RotorGeeks props. I think they were the 1.9 inch props, so we've gone to a much bigger prop, and I think that was a good idea. I think the downside is the high kV of the motors. I think they should have went 7,500. It would have been fine at 7,500. I don't know why they went all the way to 9,500. 7,500 would have given you pretty good performance and also a lot longer flight time, because these, when you try to actually, even with this camera angle, the modest camera angle that I have here, you just couldn't get the nose really down and fly very aggressively. With that high kV, you just suck all the amps out of your battery, and then you've got low voltage warnings on your OSD. You've got to back off, and then you can go a little bit again, and that's not fun flight where you're trying to manage the battery constantly. So I think hopefully you might check the website. Maybe they will downgrade these, to 7,500 or anything lower than 9,500. It's probably going to give us a little bit more flight time. Hopefully they also lengthen this wire that goes to the TX200 here. This could be just mine the way it was assembled. Maybe somebody cut it a little bit short, but it still reached, so they went with it. You may find that other people that have reviews, if they point that out, maybe you can tell they're able to get more camera angle. And getting more camera angle is a pain in the backside. You can't just loosen this and turn the camera up. This is squeezed in here so tightly now with these new side plates and the 3D print that you have to take the top plate off, unscrew these two that are holding this post together, and then lift this assembly up out of there. Put your camera angle in, and then get the bottom two pieces. They wedge in down here. Get those in while you're holding your camera angle on your camera that you want, and then fiddle with the top plate from that point. So hopefully when you've got the bottom seated, it's squeezed it enough to where it's left your camera angle along. I actually fussed with that for quite a while, and I found that to be bothersome. The PIDs that I said I would show you, I'll show you those there on screen. These are not my PIDs. I did not tweak them. They come from the factory this way. I do think there's some improvement. It seems to me that they've got the P values a little bit high, as well as the D values slightly high. You might want to toy with those if you get one. Maybe drop your P values, say 4 to 5 points on roll and pitch. Maybe yaw if you need to, and then fly it and see how it is, and then maybe drop the D values just a touch too, and then fly it and see how it is. Mainly what I saw is in quick turns that you would get some of those jitters, and when you're filming in HD, you see everything. Also, I should note on their assembly, at least it's something that I know as someone who does a fair bit of building, or at least I do when I have time, they put thread locker on their screws, so that's a nice thing. You shouldn't have to worry about these screws out of your post coming out. They should stay nice and secure. Your motor screws should stay in just fine. And we should be able to, it'll help keep everything together. That's a nice touch that we do not see with many manufacturers. So it's a nice thing that iFlight is doing that. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please let me know in that section down below. I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.